Hey, Bernard, can you hear me? I think you're muted.
Oh, yep.
There we go. Sounds good. It's nice to meet you. I'm John.
Hey, nice to meet you, John.
So, couple things before we get started. First off, thanks for doing this. I know everybody is very appreciative, and I work with Danny Quintos, and we're buddies, and she has a lot of great things to say about you.
Oh, really?
Over the past couple of years that we've talked about you. So I wanted to share that too.
Okay, that's nice to hear.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask before we get started, do you want to do a Q&A? I mean, we're kind of scheduled for an hour, but it's really up to you. Some people do, some people don't. There may be no questions.
I mean, I find there's generally not really any questions, but
Okay.
I'm open to questions. So, I mean,
I'll follow your lead. Like, I'll introduce you. You do whatever you want. If you stop with like 15 minutes to go, I'll head in the Q&A direction.
Okay. I'm not going to read the full hour at all. I mean,
okay.
I'm not going to get anywhere near that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't feel like doing it, just say, and I'll thank everybody for coming.
Yeah, the Q&A is fine though.
Okay.
We totally do the Q&A. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I'm not going to get anywhere near an hour, so it's definitely going to leave time for it. So,
okay, sweet.
I just generally don't get questions, but we'll
sure.
see. Maybe a first time for.
Sure. Okay, and then if you have a link to your book that you prefer over Amazon or anything like that, you can email it to me and I can share it. You can add it into the chat. like, you tell me what you prefer and I'll do it.
I can send it to you real quick. Let me,
Okay.
it's on my website.
Okay. If it's on your website, I can grab it.
Yeah, it's on the website. It's where you like can order the book from Swallow
Got it.
directly. I think that still works.
Yeah, I think so. Let's check.
Yeah.
Yep. No does. Good deal.
So, yep.
Good. Well, I will share that early on. And you sent me your bio, so thank you for doing that.
Yep.
So did I hear somewhere that you work at Humana? Is
Yeah,
that
I did.
correct? Okay,
Yeah, I do.
okay.
I don't really put it on my stuff or with the writing, but
No. I was thinking about it because I'm kind of stewing over potential interview questions, and I think poet outside of academia is almost rare.
yeah.
And so it stood out. I don't even know who mentioned it to me.
Yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it?
Probably been a while. Who needs to make sense? Come on. You need to have a good life. That's it.
Yeah, it's yeah, I have many things that I'm interested in. So yeah, it's poetry is one of them, and making a living is another. So
Yeah.
I wish they could be the same thing, but yeah, that's not always the way.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. And academia, what's the saying? I don't know, it just feels like hell is other people some days,
Mm.
So
Yeah, I mean,
certainly can't blame you.
I like poetry. I'm not too fond of academia, so
I get it.
Yeah.
You will find zero pushback from me on that one. Trust me. I feel like I met. Do you know Dave Harity?
The name sounds familiar, but I can't really place who that might be.
So he's a Kentucky poet, and I don't know. I think he works at Humana also, but I know it's a big place. But he was at our conference last year, did erasure stuff. So you're not alone, even though you don't know this guy.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. I'm in some good company. Yeah. So you does the interview that you are planning on doing, is that like conversing, or is it over?
Yes, so we'll do it as an email kind of chain back and forth. And if you want, you can go to and I'll invite Danny in. I interviewed Danny Quintos for the first time, like I started as an editor for Pegasus. You can kind of get a sense of how I do it. I mean, I'm interested in people, so I want to hear about people, and I think that's sort of the point of the interview. There's Danny.
Hey, Danny, how you doing?
And thanks for being tonight.
Congratulations.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you, Thrower, for hosting.
Sure, never a problem.
Yeah. I'm gonna be invisible during the during the reading.
That's fine.
Yeah. But
understandable.
Yeah, are you all good? Do you need anything? Not that I can get you anything unless it's virtual.
Can I have a glass of water?
Yeah. You need bottled water, you need some M&Ms.
No, I think I'm good, but thanks for asking and offering.
Yeah, cool. All right, I'm gonna disappear, but I'll stay in the meeting. I'll just be
good seeing you.
silent and invisible. Nice to see you. I'm excited to hear you read.
You heard it so many times. You probably
I
tired
know,
of
but
this.
I love it. I know. And my husband's putting my kid to bed right now. I was like, we're gonna watch Bernard read tonight. It'll be great. So, all right, see ya.
Right, bye.
So I was just gonna say, nothing will go in there that you don't want to go in there, and you'll have
Okay.
final edit and all that stuff.
Okay. Generally, I don't really have much feed. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I'll let you do your thing. I respect other people's work. So yeah, we can collaborate on that and
Cool.
figure out how to.
So yeah, like you as a person, you as a poet, some craft stuff, some Kentucky kind of stuff,
Okay.
you know. But you could see the previous interviews if you're curious.
Okay. And it's Pegasus.
Yeah, it's actually if you go to the Kentucky State Poetry Society webpage, you can go right there.
Okay.
And I've only been doing it for a little, since 21.
Okay.
So we're about to have our first issue of 23.
Okay, cool. All right, I'll go check it out.
Cool. Well, I'll just give you a couple minutes to chill, and I'll start inviting people in like
Okay.
right at 8 o'clock.
All righty.
Hello, everyone. Just wait a minute for Zoom to populate and get everyone in here. It looks like we have a good crowd tonight. Okay, I want to welcome everybody to the Kentucky State Poetry Society reading series. My name is John Thrower. I am the editor of Pegasus, which is the web magazine for the Kentucky State Poetry Society. And it's my pleasure to welcome tonight's reader, Bernard Clay. Kentucky native Bernard Clay grew up in Louisville. Bernard earned an MFA in creative writing from the University of Kentucky Creative Writing Program and is a member of the Appalachian Poets Collective. His work has appeared in Appalachian Heritage, Limestone, Blackbone, and Once a City Said. He now lives in Eastern Kentucky on a farm. He has an excellent book called English Lit, and I will share the link to purchase English Lit over in the chat. And I want to thank everybody for coming once again. So without further ado, here's Bernard Clay.
Thank you, John. And again, I like to thank, the Kentucky State Poetry Society, and Danny and John for having me here. This is my first reading of the year, and I'm excited to be here. It's a good month for me to be here. So I'm going to read some poems from the aforementioned book, English Lit, but I'm also going to read some newer stuff that I've been working on. And some of the stuff should be published, or I'm going to send it off to be published, and I'm just giving it a little test drive here today. So you're sort of my guinea pigs a little bit. So I'll start out reading some of the newer stuff, and then we'll transition into English Lit, and then we'll probably have a little Q&A session afterwards. The first poem I'm going to read, I'm going to try not to put my hand over my mouth. The first poem I'm going to read is inspired by, the first couple of poems actually are going to be inspired by the flooding that occurred in Eastern Kentucky. And not recently, but in 2019, I sort of moved from Louisville, or the metropolitan area, to Berea, which is sort of more rural than Kentucky, Louisville, excuse me. And so I'm starting to get my bearings here a little bit, starting to feel like, I'm a part of the community. And so I was asked to sort of write some poems about the flooding, and one of the stories that stuck out to me was about this IGA supermarket in Isom, Kentucky. And so I looked at all the footage on it and sort of absorbed it. I still want to meet the woman that inspired this poem, but this is called Elegy for an Eastern Kentucky Grocery. How does an oasis drown in a desert? Does it really matter once it's gone? Once the owls and everything in them breaks down and compiles in a disintegrated heap out on the parking lot in front of that hometown proud sign, taunting those driving by, having to go 40 more minutes for some damn fresh food. Over 50 years, Gwen's been here, where most Black folks call sundown country, holding her hamlet down as a cornerstone with reasonably priced meats and staples, right between Cap's Barbara shop and Super Dollar, unapologetically Black and Appalachian, independent and owner, untouched all this time, cause who's gonna bite the only hand that feeds them, no matter the color? But why resurrect this place? It can easily be taken away again. The Rockhouse Creek isn't going anywhere, but that sentiment passes quick because Gwen's not built like that. She puts this community on her back, converting the skeleton of her storefront into a triage, and calls all in need down from them hills, which in this age attracts the viral content, spotlit, leading to national morning shows, invites to Broadway tickets, to state acclamations from the governor, to comically and monetarily large checks and corporate support to not just rebuild, but modernize the whole building. And of course, Gwen calmly takes it all in with poise. Because one day, the red IGA sign will be lit, a beacon in Isom again. So the next poem, and I meant to turn off my phone. Sorry about that. The next poem that I'm going to read is also inspired by the flooding, but it sort of takes a more, I'm really into thinking about like what existed here before colonialism and European conquest, especially in Kentucky. And so I like to run thought experiments and play them out in my poems. The next two poems sort of do that. So this one is called They Freaks of Nature. They say it was a 1,000-year flood that hit the Cumberland Plateau and turned creeks into Niles and rivers into Caspian seas. This place, which over eons of tectonic collision, glaciation, and erosion, has architected a perfect rain percolating nursery to birth headwaters. This place can be flooded. This same they will also say no humans inhabited Kentucky 1,000 years ago because they only detect people by what has been destroyed and left behind. But the ones here back then were so integrated into the robust ecosystem that they later methodically dismantled. There was hardly a trace left by the time real science was discovered. But if asked back then, those indigenous folks probably would confuse, what are they talking about? Faces would say, it's water. How can there be too much? While now in the news every other day, 1,000-year floods pop up in a new spot on the planet. Heck, if the Appalachians were asked if floods like this had been happening back then 10,000 or even 10 million years ago, those mountains would chuckle and say, we haven't seen anything like this since we were ocean bottom during the Devonian age. Thank you. This is another poem sort of talking about just, yeah, like I said, I'm thinking about how things were before disturbance here in what was basically a Garden of Eden, but it was sort of managed by people who existed in sync with the world around them. And so this is called a micro essay on ornamental grass. You call me fescue, Bermuda, or even Kentucky bluegrass, like I've been over here all along. But like you, I'm just a feudal remnant, haphazardly broadcast across dispossessed lands. The colonizer's blueprint, a rolled out carpet of familiar Eurasian green ahead of your arrival, savagely replacing all the native big stem stands and gamma grasses and switch grasses that multiculturally bunch across the savanna with sun-burnable blades of homogeneity that collapse with every drought, with shallow roots that shed off millennia of spongy topsoil with every storm. I soften this land for your ancestors to conquest. Maybe that's why now you spend 3 to 6 hours a week worshiping me, listening to the drone of horsepower piston popping sermons, suppressing any attempts of the natural and the diverse to supplant me with cultish ceremonies, petrol baptisms and routine mass circumcisions at that front yard church of perpetually pruned and pristine holy lawns of your fathers, unaware of your deification of me. Otherwise, you would call me something else. Thank you. Yeah, I know. I may have, as I read these, I'm saying I'm sounding a little very preachy, but when you're out in this natural world, it sort of affects you in a different way. I know, like I wrote mostly in the beginning of my life about living in a city, but now that I'm out here, and especially since the pandemic, you sort of are aware of like what we have done or what has been done. This is another. I was out in the woods and I heard, and I'll mention this in the poem, a white-throated sparrow, and it was just the most magnificent song I've ever heard from a bird. I mean, I know there's brilliant, compositions that birds do, but it just struck me as just the most intricate thing I've ever heard. And so it inspired this poem that I've been trying to write for years. This is called White Noise. Propelled by the phlebotomized fluids of the earth on rounded steel-belted tree sap needles, we ride in the grued, frosted wax blacks quarried ribbons that stretch from sea to sea of imminently seized wetlands. Pathways to those impermeable strip lots topped with a looped array of replaceable box doors on replay, powered by the cooking of petrified mountain guts, edifying Edison and Adam Smith's genius. This warped disk of existence stuck on repeat, just a 15-minute drive from anywhere symphony, a constant cacophony of nothingness, muting almost anything else while also deafening us. But outside of there, or maybe another time, when rivers rhyme and naked feet bongo beat the naked earth, and the heart was a metronome, and giant chestnuts were still around and sampled wind, hissing a raspy rhapsody that commingled with the intricate melodic song of the white-throated sparrow, inspiring us to actually hear music, to hear us as a part of it, and not as the composers. All right, so those are my new poems. I hope you liked them. It was very scary for me to read them. I usually don't do that, especially without workshopping and stuff, but you know, as you get older, you try new things. So I'm gonna go and start reading from English Lit. And yeah, I think I can read quite a few poems. So what I'm gonna do this time, I've been reading English Lit. It came out in September of 21. So I've been reading it for about 1.5 years or almost 2 years now. So I'm gonna try to read some of the off the beaten path poems that I'm not so known for, just because I want to try something new. So this is just very experimental reading altogether. So I'm gonna start with a poem. Of course, even though these are off the beaten path, they all deal with things of family and neighborhood and identity. So this first poem is inspired, or it's around, of course, my father, my daddy. It's called Getting Sharp. Every Sunday evening, Daddy sees the living room for his ritual. The whole time his eyes would be tethered to 60 Minutes or Knight Rider or even Murder, She Wrote. First, he lopped off the iron pokers plunging from his nostrils, then scraped an old razor down his bristled face, sounding like metal across concrete. Then he'd wax that fat salt and pepper mustache black, twisted it into villain curled tips, 'cause no woman wants some old man, he'd say, taking his gaze off the tube only to lose it in the porthole mirror reflecting himself. He'd buff and varnish for a whole TV show until my snaggletooth smile reflected back in the many pairs of Oxfords and loafers lining the living room. Buzzed off of the kiwi paste, he'd say, "Shoes are the second thing the white man's gonna judge you by. Ain't nothing you can do about the first." He'd point at my forearm. "So you better get the shoes right." Finally, he would unfold the arrowhead board, firing up the hot, flat anvil to stab across a week's worth of button-up shirts until they were as thin and crisp as papyrus. And if Mama wasn't around, he'd lean over and whisper, "You'll never get a good-looking woman with a bunchy pair of slacks, boy." Then he'd grind his wool suit pants into a razor's edge. So that's my dad. So it's only fair that I read a poem about my mom. And so this poem, we didn't know what gentrification, when this poem takes place, gentrification was a New York word. It hadn't came to Kentucky yet or Louisville yet, so we didn't know what it was. So stuff was still dilapidated and just, not well maintained after white flight in urban Louisville. So this is called 28th and Catalpa. In the 80s, on walks to the bus stop, Mom would fill in the exposed, empty, burned out spaces of entire city blocks, augmenting reality to a pre-riot state. So where mom sees a soda fountain shop, tasting the bubbly bite of root beer, waited on at the front counter instead of getting it to go at the back door, as she watches the bustle of brown pedestrians in business attire passing by like this is baby Harlem. I see nothing but a headless structure with graffiti boarded eyes on a 20-year death fall into a puddle of bricks. And over there at the department store, department store size gunshot wound at the corner of 28th and Catalpa, her eyes take her shopping at the Black Run department store. She peruses phantom owls trying on polyester garments at the only department store she's allowed to at the time. And across the street at the Cineplex, she sits in the front row, not the balcony, flinching her way through 7 watches of Hitchcock's The Birds. I just stare through a dead theater's scorched rib bones jutting up from its shelled carcass, the gray Louisville skyline barely visible through the murk. Mom would sometimes say, they tricked us into thinking separate was bad. We get that reminder every time we walk through this place so we can pay bus fare to reach their equality. As we wait in this haunted crematorium, which in the morning fog still smoldered like it did the day after King was assassinated. The next poem, so like I said, I like to write about place, and the next couple poems are about places, maybe the next 3 poems. Places I grew up in, and there's a lot of writers now writing about Louisville, Joy Priest being one of them, and then we have the book coming out on Saraband that's an anthology of Louisville writers. Yeah, I like to write about Louisville, and so one of the things that I also wanted to write about was the first addictive substance that we are exposed to as Americans. So this is his corner store. They build interchangeable temples to our endorphins on every corner here. At first, I was ordered to go, but soon I was volunteering for those daily filter cool runs for dad up the street to that key lime cinder block shop, draped with a constant macaroni necklace of cars at the drive-through, fronted by a concrete garden of statue men kissing paper bag Medusas. The alley behind it is a casino with money pots often left when cops raid. Wrapped in cartoons and lore, I flock with the fructose fiends, jittering off Jolly Rancher jolts, prying for stronger buzzes. See, our gateway locks are busted open well before we get a whiff of the really addictive stuff. The next poem is sort of about my family, but also about a park in Louisville. It's one of the Olmsted parks, but it was the one that was probably well, there was a couple that were neglected after white flight in Louisville, but there was Shawnee and there was Iroquois. Most of you may be familiar with like Cherokee Park, which is like the crown jewel. But Iroquois is a pretty nice park, and I think it's getting better now. But during the 80s, it was basically an outdoor crack house. But we still went to it and had fun. So this is about my experience at Iroquois Park during the 80s. On some fall Saturdays, after hours of being trapped in a prison of droning designed to shame me, Mom broke norms and Sabbath. We'd leave the stained glass early, invite my BFF to sleep over, pick up a box of wings and wedges from Indies, avoiding Dad for the afternoon and heading out to that mound south of the city. After eating, while mom laid on a picnic table and read long neglected Jet magazines, LaRon, Vet, and I approached the hulking hill before us that we likened to a porcupine leviathan like the one that ate Jonah. And we ran full speed at it, got swallowed behind its jawless row of tulip poplar teeth, and let the dense honeysuckle seize us deeper into the belly of those woods. We kept charging through and up to its limestone blowhole lookout point to view the skewed city spiderwebbed out to every horizon. Then we shoot all the way down the Persian rug of gold and orange leaves on our backs, the city and everything else falling away. Eventually getting down to mom, my eyes thunderstormed, my shame gone. Then we go home. And if sports were off, and if daddy's team had won, then right before SNL's cold open, he would give LaRon and me the "Whose daddy makes the best popcorn" quiz. We answered, "You do, of course." That newfangled microwave corn from LaRon Suburbia couldn't stand up to daddy's hot out the pot masterpieces, each buttered and salted handful a crunchy blessing. That's that poem. So there's this movie called, or there's a book, I guess, I think Roger McCormack wrote it, called No Country for Old Men. I think that's the name of the book too, but the movie was called that. It came out a while back, but this poem was sort of inspired by that idea. It was happening around that same time. Like, I know the movie and the book are deeper than that, but what I took from the movie initially was that he was writing about this point in time when things seem to change here in America, seem to get more violent. And so this is called The Last Block Party. And it's just like a very vague memory of a block party that I experienced before they just stopped having block parties because they just were not attainable. It's coming like puffs of mesquite, stampeding down the street from the grilled teeth of rusted half barrels, coming like finger pokes through clean wrapped bowls of potato salad or macaroni and cheese, picking the block's best dish. It's coming like type 2 diabetes and orange push pop mustaches, pedaled by the sticker tattooed ice cream trucks, barricading both ends of the street, whistling Dixie and synth. It's coming like fanned bicycle cards, smiling blind tin winds across burned blotched tables, winking beer bottle spider eyes as the spade champ is crowned. It's coming like a needle switch to a spun black wax universe, like subaquatic off-the-wall bass lines oozed out of the porch-bound speakers, intertwined with Michael Jackson's falsetto disco death croak as little girls leap between twirling double helixes of rainbow-scaled snakes whose plastic bodies thwack sidewalk on beat to "Can't Stop Till You Get Enough." But you hardly ever know when you're at the last of something. There's no notification except for the blaring of the slave catcher sirens getting louder and people heaped on people, heaped like fleshy Lego walls around him, splayed in the street. The lopsided crimson polka dots of his white t-shirt getting bigger and redder, and beneath him a perfectly round, dark polished pool opens wider and wider, swallowing the body first, and then everything else whole. Okay. Yes. Next poem I'm going to read It's something about family a little bit. Uh, and it's just like my family, like a lot of families, sort of split up due to divorce. Um, and so this is sort of a commentary on it. It's called Scrapped Book. When they bought me, I wasn't a predator. I was a book-bound internal lockbox of family moments frozen, disorganized, but always there on the side of the couch. They broke me out to embarrass, to jog a story loose, or to just prove a point. And as the years passed, I got fat with those 5x7 morsels until I became volumes of pivotal milestones of bad fashion choices and mythical family locales. And then one day, the family just disintegrated. I was left with the father/husband, no longer couch adjacent, but shoved in the back of a cheap Atlanta storage unit. By the second summer, pictures from the 70s and 80s were nothing but puddles of yummy chemicals in my belly to slowly digest. By the third summer, I was in a landfill where I could freely devour the whole entire catalog of their lives. Yeah, some of these are bleak. Sorry. But it's a part of life. Everything's not funny. I'll get to a funny one though here soon. So um another thing that happened during divorce is you move places. And so we lived in Louisville, and um across from Louisville, across the Ohio River from Louisville is Indiana, of course, but there's Jeffersonville, and there's these little communities that are basically suburbs of Louisville. So we moved to the suburbs, and this is my first time sort of living amongst suburbanites. And so this is called Face Blindness. Me and my brown skin are a novel topic when I first arrive at a Southern Indiana school. Everyone goes out of their way that first day. For me, I'm overwhelmed by the barrage of pale. No busing here. I was a living amongst them. So I had to make adjustments, especially out in the real world, at the Sizzlers, the malls, and the fall fairs, because when I waved at quote unquote friends, I guess my face would melt into a brown splotch to be scared of, avoided, or just seen through. Next day, they would act like nothing happened. When I came home hurt, mom pulled me aside and said, it does no good trying to be buddies with people who don't have to see you. Just flatten them people into the background and keep on walking. And I did, transforming my world into a giant obstacle course teeming with two-legged obstructions that I would simply whitewash away, exactly like my friends who I assume were taught these ways by their parents too. Um, again, I grew up in the 80s, and one of my early aspirations was to be a scientist. I like, as you can tell by some of the stuff that I'm writing about, I'm really into like history, but I really used to be into like space. I had a telescope, and one event sort of was very pivotal in sort of changing that, and so I wrote a poem about it. This is called Making of a Casual Astronomer. From my yard, I could only count a few dozen tiny twinkled suns shining through the patchy purple above. Incandescent smog stunted my night vision for so many years. I didn't see my first Milky Way until the radiantly rain dance renditions of the heavens were splayed across the planetarium ceilings, foretelling that once in a lifetime snowball that would hang on the horizon for weeks next year. In anticipation, I asked Santa for a telescope, dreaming of anti-gravity summer camps in Huntsville and walking on the moons of Saturn one day. I aimed to follow the footsteps of Ronald McNair until that crisp January morning when they broadcast into my third grade classroom that shuttle bursting into an orange fireball, then plumes of white through the ice blue sky. It challenged my celestial ambitions. After that, I was content to pinhole project total solar eclipses onto index cards and hike parsecs into the wild at dusk to recline back into indigo meadows or be embraced by black bluffs as my silvering eyes filled up with stars. I'm gonna read a couple more poems because I try not to read too many poems because I don't want you to glaze over. I know I was supposed to be here for like 45 minutes, and hopefully with a couple more poems, I'll make it to at least 40 minutes. If not, I might pull in another poem if I still am a little short of 40 minutes. But I'm gonna read the title poem just because it's a good palate cleanser. And it's fun to read. So the last two poems are more like fun to read poems that, you know, also have their own meaning. No need to elaborate too much on them. English Lit is the title poem. English Lit ain't never meant shit to me, a griot from Urban Decay. I care less about the way the Middle English or even their contemporaries display their masturbation, aka mastery of a native tongue sprung from spliced together stolen components of failed conquest-thirsty cultures. Meanwhile, I carry an $80 leather-bound 50-pound edition that I don't even read, sitting in classrooms full of white girls who aspired to be teachers or pontificating writers like the self-absorbed ones up front, jacking their egos for hours straight about imagined, intricate, insignificant details of forced literary regurgitation and their slightly different postmodern imitations. They talk about my limitations on papers and in my daily speech, yet I still continue to reach to the streets, representing, even though they be hinting with C minuses and D pluses that my attempts at writing should cease and desist. But my claim to fame is not only as a writer, but also an arsonist. Because every time my pen and paper hit, I receive great joy at watching the Queen's English being lit. So yeah, that was the title poem. It's a funny story how that got, it was between this, English Lit was going to be the name of the book, or The Good Couch was going to be the name of the book. And we ended up going with English Lit because we felt like the thumbing your nose at conventions was the overall theme of what this book was sort of getting at. But it could have been The Good Couch too, because The Good Couch talks about family. This is The Good Couch. In the living room sat the couch, one of them splurge items, an oatmeal tweed burlap thing, purchased spontaneously at Value City. And for the good couch reason, my parents covered it with a sheet of plastic, a foggy, heavy synthetic skin that rustled with every motion. When summers smothered up, scorching hot days, back when home AC was a myth to me, something not felt but alluded to on TV. On those simmering evenings, prime time bubbled across blue flickering screens, couch filled to capacity with family, and box fans propped in windows, making our house a convection oven. We would broil on that couch as its transparent epidermis bonded with our bare arms and legs, so that, of course, I would have to wait until the next commercial break because the sound of me ripping clean from the Velcro crouch would have drowned out the TV a bit, and everyone would have thrown a fit, because Cosby might have said something witty in his air-conditioned brownstone. Well, I hate to say it, but that's as much as I can read. I'm sorry, John. I wish I could go a few more minutes more, but after a
Bernard,
while, I get tired of hearing my own voice.
that was absolutely wonderful. And just, I was monitoring the chat the whole time. I know I'm not alone in saying that. So thank you so much. Great job. Loved it. And I know a lot of other people did. I want to open it up to questions if anybody has them. Feel free to just chime in. If you would prefer to add a question in the chat, please do so. I'm happy to read that.
Oh yeah, there's comments down there, isn't it, in the chat?
There are a lot of comments.
Oh, well, thank you everyone for the nice, kind comments. I'm glad you enjoyed it. You know, it's hard, you know, doing these readings, you don't get feedback from the audience while you're reading. So it's good to know.
Elise, yes, if you have a question, please feel free to just go ahead and ask it.
Yeah, sorry. You said in the chat, I didn't know if there was a reason that I had to speak only typing. But hi, I'm Elise. I am Dr. Shanita Jackson's student, and I really liked your poem about the white-throated sparrow. I don't really have a question, but except for how did you do that? Because it felt like a rock that got like exploded and then it turned into a geode, and I was having all these like images just go through my head. Like, I don't know why I thought of this, but the surprise I felt when you switched it at the Volta, I thought of this one time that I was like on a bus and I was super tired and I reached under the seat and a piece of gum just fell off into my hand and it was kind of half dried and chewed. And then I freaked out in this kind of delayed response way. And I know that sounds like such a disgusting way to describe that poem, but like for some reason, when you said the word gum, it made me think of that and it switched to something else super quickly. I hope that makes sense. Just, I don't know how you did it.
You talking about when you say the switch, what do you mean in the poem about the white-throated sparrow?
Yeah, I don't really know how to describe it. I think it was the switch from whenever you were talking about like all the white twisted up things. It made me think of like, just, I don't know why, but it made me think I was back on that bus. And then you started talking about how like there could be some stuff beyond that. And then the image just came in my head. I don't know why, but I was like trying to listen to the poem and it just kind of sent me on this journey to think about all these other memories. I could tell that there had been like, you know, those like paintings or artists put layers and layers of paint and then scrapes them away and then put more layers of paint. It kind of reminded me of that.
Huh. That's pretty interesting. That poem is sort of like an like you said, it's sort of like that. It's like poems from years past that I'm trying to get to where I was going and I never could get there. And so it just happened when I was out on a hike a few days ago, actually a week or so ago. And I heard it and it was just like, oh, you know, the lines around the throated sparrow, I was like, oh, this is how we learned how to do music. This is how humans learn how to do music. And then I'd had these other poems where I was just talking about how our society is like just a broken record. And so I'm glad you know, it's sort of, yeah, the imagery is supposed to come at you like overwhelming almost. So I'm glad it sort of accomplished that. Thank you for the feedback.
Thank you. There's a question over in the chat from Marianne, and she says, I hear a lot of similarities in the language you use to write about Louisville and in the new poems you read tonight, which are more rural because you're writing about community in both. Would you talk about having a community point of view in poetry?
Yeah, to me, and I mean, I think like there's definitely space for imagination and writing about things beyond your space. But I personally am enthralled by very, very simple things around me. And so I could write books and books about living in downtown Louisville. And on that same token, being out here um, in a rural area, I'm exposed to something brand new. And so,
And to the rural areas internet. I know this one. Windstream is ours.
Let's all just hang on a minute and
Yeah.
hope that Bernard comes back.
There he comes. There.
am I back? I'm
You're
sorry.
back.
See, that's the thing about living out in the rural area. Your internet goes out. Your internet goes out sometimes.
It's almost perfect timing.
Do you have
Uh,
Windstream, by the way?
I'm not on Windstream. I'm on Spectrum, but it's not very. It's during this time of night. The bandwidth gets a little weird. Gets a little taxed. So, what was the last thing y'all heard? Because I was just trying to say that I feel obligated to write about my community. I don't think all writers have to do that, but for me, I feel like it's an obligation to express my perspective to like I'm here observing this existence, and whether I'm in inner city Louisville or I'm in downtown Berea or I'm out in the Daniel Boone National Forest, I want to sort of exemplify those things that I'm sort of taking in and share it with the world in a way that only I can. So that's where community comes in. I feel like it's an important part. It will always be an important part of especially the poetry that I write. Not to say that there's not any room for imagining different spaces, but I travel a lot, and so I plan to write about also about lands far beyond my community. So, but thank you for the question, Marianne. I appreciate it.
There's also a question from Danny, and she wants to know if you drafted any new poems for the anthology, or did you use some of the work from English Lit?
So when they asked me about those poems for the anthology, I was sort of after the pandemic, I sort of didn't write for a while. And so I sent Iroquois Park, and I have a poem called Recycling the Neighborhood in English Lit. I sent those, and those got accepted. I would have loved, I regret now, I wish I had sent in some other poems that I had written about Louisville that I wanted to get out, but I just was not in a place where I could work on my stuff at the time when they asked me. But yeah, so they're poems from English Lit. Although as of right now, I'm back into the writing swing of things and trying to send stuff out and get it published. Like I said, a couple of those poems are going to probably be published somewhere, maybe 3 or 4 of them, of the newer poems. So I'm continuing on, and I'm hoping to start collecting these newer sort of nature related poems that I'm writing.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Bernard, congratulations. You made it beyond 8:45. I knew you could do it.
Thank you. And thank y'all for having me here. It was great, great experience and a great audience, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. And everybody, thank you for being here. Please look over in the chat to get a copy of English Lit. I will put that in there one more time. And thank you so much for coming. Bernard, thank you very much.
No problem. And thank you. And thank Danny. Thank you too, Danny.
Everyone have a great night.
Thank you.